Good Wednesday, everybody. It's Jim, it's Matt. And, Matt, I don't think we've seen the pitching in this particular, the Dodgers situation since the days of the team out the road from you with Glavine and Smoltz and that entire, you know, super pitching staff that they had at the Braves. I mean, what we've seen first in Snell going 8 innings, then Yamamoto going 9. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, back to back. When you get 17 innings out of your game one and game two starters,
Mm-hmm.
17 strikeouts and one earned run,
Uh-huh.
you can't ask for any better. Like it's not possible. I don't think to ask for anything else.
Yeah.
Um, it's the reason the Dodgers are winning. And I did read something today where they were discussing the impact this series itself kind of has on the CBA and the outlook as to whether or not there will be baseball in 2027.
Mm-hmm.
It's the superpower versus a team that's in the bottom half of spending annually.
Right.
And what you're seeing so far is the two guys that the Dodgers paid just a boatload of money on
Mm-hmm.
over the past two off seasons did exactly what they paid them to do. They showed up in the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
them 8 or 9 strong innings, which was probably more than Dave Roberts could have asked for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you got Glass now, who's setting up, and he was there down the stretch. He was there one of their most solid pitchers.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in the DS they used him as a reliever,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is an interesting way because the Dodgers have enough quality starting pitching
Mm-hmm.
that they can like that's an option they have. They're using Roki Sasaki out of the bullpen. They use
Right.
Glass out of the bullpen. Now, granted, I think he's switching back to a starter role in a 7-game set.
Right.
But it's really interesting to see these teams, like a team like the Dodgers that has the pitching depth that they do, understand how to use their pitching. Like
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't just cut and dry. Like, well, this guy's going to go this game because it's his turn or whatever.
Right.
No,
They don't play that game. Yeah.
yeah, they pitched who they had to pitch in in the wild card, and then
Mm-hmm.
when you get there, they continued their rotation, but it's pretty much a 3-man rotation. Like
Right.
they don't have to go 4. Now I think they're switching it back to 4 for Glass now, but it's a really good job of managing your pitching and your workload pitching in the postseason.
Right. And the thing that you'd mentioned earlier about Glass now coming out of the bullpen in the divisional, in the wild card, was he started when he was at Tampa Bay. He started in those situations where you know, um, the Rays had an opener, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he may go 2 or 3 innings, and then that'd be it. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like it was something new to him to get ready to do that, because um, he had a significant amount of experience in that when he was with Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm. And I think some good context to add to the two pitching performances that we've seen from the Dodgers
Mm-hmm.
is that this is the playoffs. Every pitch matters, and when managers sense trouble, you generally get the hook pretty quick.
Uh-huh.
And that's how comfortable Dave Roberts felt, and that's how little traffic has been on the bases for both of those guys, that they could go both 8 and 9 innings, and Dave Roberts didn't feel like the pressure of the game getting to the starter and need to go pull him because there was too much traffic on the bases or something like that. They've been so shut down they haven't even been allowing traffic. It's not like they're escaping innings; they're dominating.
Right. I got Ron Darling made a good observation, and he said, to your point, he said, when you look at 100 pitches, right, in a game,
Mm-hmm.
he said, how many of those 100 pitches are stressful pitches?
Yeah.
And he said, if you just say, okay, well, he's thrown 100 pitches, but as you say, like Yamamoto last night threw 3 pitched to 3 batters out of a stretch. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
In the 27 batters he faced. That, there wasn't, as you said, a lot of traffic on the base paths. So if you're not having any trouble getting outs, and you're not, there's not a lot of traffic out there, then those pitches are not stressful to you. They're just pitches.
Yeah.
And I think in those regards, okay, yeah, he threw about maybe 110 pitches last night.
Mm-hmm.
That's a normal outing, even if it might have been 6 innings. You can throw 100 and some odd pitches, but he was able to get to 9 with 121 pitches, in large part to your point, because he wasn't in any stress situation.
Yeah, and I think a great example of that is kind of going back to that game 1 of the wild card series between the Yankees and the Red Sox. And they talked about like the pitcher usage and why would you pull Max Fried at the pitches that he was at? The reason they pulled Max Fried at the pitches he was at is because he was in a lot of high stress situations, a lot of runners in scoring positions, gave up a few walks, stuff like that. That's stuff that wasn't happening. That hasn't happened the last 2 days for the Dodgers, and so they get the luxury of pushing these guys and getting these guys to go a little bit further on a team where the bullpen isn't fantastic. I think that's the biggest piece of this, is that they've kept their bullpen well rested, and they're making them use them only when they absolutely have to. Like they felt like they had to in the 8th inning for Blake Snell due to his pitch count. And to be honest with you, I'm a little bit surprised, given Yamamoto's pitch count, that they didn't feel like they had to.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't feel like they had to. They let him go the whole way. And they've pitched now through 2 games, 1 inning of bullpen baseball. And that's for the Dodgers, and specifically the way their lineup's built and the way their rotation's built, that's winning baseball for them every time.
I'm not certain. I can't remember honestly who made the observation last night, but they said that Yamamoto in Japan averaged 150, 160 pitches, a game. So that he was, they were talking about, well, the magic number usually is around 100 pitches. And for him, 100 pitches, he still got gas in the tank.
Yeah.
So I think, I think that was another thing that made it a little easier for them to go with him. Plus the fact that you made this mention the other day, these guys are coming off an injury. They're fine now. They're basically, they've got innings left in their arms that guys don't have left in their arms.
Yeah, I mean, for Glass now, and I don't, to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure Yamamoto played the entire season.
Yeah, he was fine.
Yeah, but like Snell and Glass now and guys like that who have missed time with injury, those are innings off the arm. And if you're healthy now, then you're getting the forms of these guys that maybe you would look like in like late July or early August, maybe middle to late August too. Like these are well-rested arms, and that matters now. And to the point of Yamamoto and going deep, you can always tell with your guy. Like I think that's such a big part of the managers, is knowing your players and knowing, I think pitching specifically, knowing your pitchers. How do they look when they feel good? How are they pitching when they feel good? What changes happen when they're a little bit more gassed and tired and don't feel like they have it as much? And obviously, Dave Roberts felt good letting Yamamoto go, and as he should have, because he gave him the only run he gave up was the first batter of the game.
Yeah.
So
that was the only bad pitch he threw.
Yeah. So it's a really good job by the Dodgers coaching staff to not get antsy and not give an early hook, which is what you'd expect out of a veteran coaching staff who won a World Series last year and has been in the playoffs every year, that Dave Roberts has been sitting in the manager's seat.
Right. And the funny thing, I did see another interview last night, pregame interview, where they're talking to Clayton Kershaw. And, he doesn't expect to start in any of the games. But he said what he's been doing on his, pitching days, his off days, because he has had a lot of off days, you know,
Hmm.
at this point in time. He says, I've been focusing on pitching 1 or 2 innings, with basically throwing everything my arm, everything I can throw in my, he said stuff that I would wait maybe to the when I know it's the end, right? When I know that I'm going to get out of there, just
Hmm.
nothing left in the tank type stuff. He said, so I'm beginning with the concept that I only have an inning to pitch.
Hmm.
And he said, for an inning, he goes, I get, my velocity is right there. My control is there. I'm feeling like if they ask me to pitch 1 or 2 innings, I could pitch 1 or 2 innings and not have to worry about whether or not you know any concerns. So if you got a Clayton Kershaw in your back pocket that you can pull out and say, "Hey, look, you know, let me toss you the ball," and you got a 2-time Cy Young Award winner. That's yeah. Granted, he is at the end of his career on the back nine, but he's still Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah. Yeah. I also have like the questions of I do wonder, given his age and relative playoff performance,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't think it's something that can be. I don't think it's something that should be overstated, but it
Right.
is something that you still have to have an understanding of. Is that Clayton Kershaw? He just has not been as good in the playoffs in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Like just point blank center. It could be whatever reasons it may be. Probably one of, if not the best pitcher ever in the regular season. But
Mm-hmm.
when it comes playoff time, he wasn't the same. And so it is good to have that in your back pocket. But I feel like that's probably a real deep barrel pull, like a feeling of a guy who maybe like you feel like you're comfortable here. Maybe
Yeah.
there's some pressure, but you got to lead, and it's a guy that you think can navigate the moment. I
Mm-hmm.
think that works, but still, given his age and relative playoff performance, I don't know how much I would trust him in like a
Mm-hmm.
high leverage situation.
I don't think that they're looking at that. I think they're looking at if they need somebody to bridge a couple of innings.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I don't.
They
I'm not thinking he's closing it. I just think
yeah,
that they're looking at, okay, I need a guy. I need somebody to get me from the fourth inning to the sixth inning,
yeah,
and I would feel very comfortable that's his spot.
yeah.
I don't think suddenly he's become Dennis Eckersley and he's the closer.
I think it would be where I would see them probably using him.
Mm-hmm.
It, I don't know how their staff is lined up. Like I don't know what their rest days looks like. But if there's like a day that Otani's set to pitch
Yeah,
and maybe you don't feel good about like you don't like the rest that she hands on.
right.
So you toss him out there to follow Otani's couple of innings to give you a
Mm-hmm.
couple more innings and then kind of weave or let him be the bridge between your opener and your bullpen.
Right. Mm-hmm. Because you figure, you know, Kershaw's good for two. He could probably get you 3 solid innings.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
definitely could.
and especially if they're playing in Los Angeles, because that ballpark is, you know, at the time of the day that they're playing,
Mhm.
which 8 o'clock, 8:08 starting times, right? That's right in the middle of the afternoon, the late afternoon in Los Angeles. So you're getting shadows and all kinds of stuff. So
Mhm.
it's hard to pick the ball up in any ballpark, but specifically out at Chavez Ravine out there at Dodger Stadium. I can tell you from personal experience, it's got horrific sun fields.
Yeah.
Coming out of the coming out of seeing the shadows and all of a sudden. So Clayton Kershaw, even if he's throwing like 95, 96 miles an hour, if he can get it to that, it's going to look like 100 miles an hour or more.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, at this point, 95, 96 feels like, well, it it's a scenario where you would expect that on short innings
Mm-hmm.
and pretty good rest. Like that's where you would expect him to kind of want to ramp it up to,
Mm-hmm.
considering he sat around 92, 93 for the majority of the season, I believe.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, and I think this is plays a lot into it, and that is that he knows this is it, right? I mean, Kershaw knows that most likely this is the end of the career is here,
Yeah.
and I think that yeah, he's had that reputation of having trouble in the postseason, but he's still a quality pitcher, and he's got I think at this point in time it's a challenge personally to him that he wants to get the ball and at least, if nothing else, help in getting them to a World Series and perhaps getting them to another World Championship.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he definitely can. I think there's going to come a point if they are to win the World Series that they will need him just to go out there and eat some innings, if nothing else. So I think he will probably be a contributing piece. And to your point, I'm fairly certain he announced his retirement. So this is definitely
he did.
Yeah. So this is definitely the end of the road for him.
And he's likely to enter the broadcast booth about 14 seconds after he takes his jersey off. He's a very articulate guy. He's funny. He's self-deprecating, and I think that's and he's a Dodger, and Dodgers love Dodgers on their broadcast. So
yeah,
even though who's out in Los Angeles who's really really loved, and I he's a good guy. It's not that. Nomar Garciaparra.
Yeah. I mean, he was a fan favorite in Boston during his time.
Yeah.
I don't think Nomar was able to connect himself to the fan base a lot better than a lot of players have over the years. And that's whether he's in Boston or whether he's in LA.
Right.
That was what he was great at.
Yeah, I the only reason I bring that up is, to me, and obviously you're a Red Sox fan, so I will defer to you on this one. But to me, I always thought of Nomar more of as a Red Sox than I did a Dodger, because he wasn't a Dodger for that long.
Yeah, I do too. I don't. There's absolutely no backing, but I do wonder, the way things went down when they traded him out.
Yeah, that didn't work out well.
Yeah, I was about to say, I wonder if he doesn't harbor a little bit of, I don't know, bad blood is the word, but it may not be his favorite place in the world, especially considering the same ownership group is still in charge.
Right. Well, I think that, much of what you said of Nomar just being Nomar, right? That he is a good guy regardless of who he's playing for. Yeah. So it's not hard to like Nomar. So I think that even though he didn't have a large stretch with the Dodgers, he's still, he's become a really good pregame analyst on the Dodger telecasts, and people enjoy, and he comes on occasionally. He'll slide over and do, color on the radio, or sometimes fill in on the television side. So he has found a home as a Dodger broadcaster, and it's funny that you sit there and go through that and see it and see what a wonderful job he's doing out there, and it's good for him. But as I said, as someone who personally thinks of Nomar, when I think of him as a player, I think of him more of a Red Sox than as a Dodger. There's another guy who personally is someone who I like a lot, Don Orsillo. Don has done an absolutely amazing job as the broadcaster for the San Diego Padres.
Yes.
And Don got caught up in a situation in Boston, and I'm not gonna talk out of school here, okay? But Dave O'Brien basically gave the Red Sox an ultimatum. And that ultimatum was, if he didn't get what he wanted, he was going to go somewhere else. And I'm not so certain that I forgive John Henry. And, they kicked Orsillo out of that broadcast booth to placate Dave O'Brien.
Well, I can assuredly tell you, and I can't speak for all of the Boston Red Sox fans, just the ones that I
Right.
apparently that I maybe I'm in an echo chamber online or something like that. But almost everything that I see and read is people were very upset when Don left. They didn't want him to leave. I agree with that. I think he's one of the best, if not the best, in terms of play-by-play right now. Like he is that good. Um, so they weren't happy when he left, and they aren't happy with Dave O'Brien now because he feels like they don't feel like he's like a hometown broadcaster. There's multiple examples of that. I will say and give him credit where it's due is the feeling around it got a little better towards the back half of the season. Like it
Hmm.
felt like Dave O'Brien was a little bit more on the Red Sox team, but people love Don Orsillo, and
Hmm.
I think they still do. They still want him back,
Hmm.
if we're being honest. So I was unaware that's the way things panned out, but I can tell you that is probably the opposite of how things would have turned out if it was left up to the Red Sox fans.
Yeah.
Fan base.
I think that, I mean, people forget, some you don't because you're a Red Sox fan, that Dave O'Brien was the Miami Marlins broadcaster.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a relationship as, because at one point, obviously, the Marlins were owned by John Henry.
Yeah.
So Dave O'Brien and John Henry had a good relationship. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
There's nothing wrong with broadcasting to, as a broadcaster, to want a job, and who wouldn't want the Red Sox job?
Yep.
Uh, but there's also um, a look at your fan base and a read of your fan base of a guy in Don Orsillo who you can't get much more Boston than Don, who graduated from, we talked about Northeastern University. Don Orsillo was a Boston guy who graduated from a Boston university and ended up, starting into the radio and then getting over to the television side. And he worked his way, all the way up from the Pawtucket Red Sox to, to the Red Sox, Boston Red Sox. And I mean, the good news is Don Orsillo is such a great broadcaster that it doesn't matter where he broadcasts the games. He's going to get a good, relationship with the fans
Mm-hmm.
because he's just a good broadcaster. And I can assure you, the San Diego people love him.
Yeah. I think it's kind of in a weird case, it's very similar to the way that Penn State and James Franklin scenario played out.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of like, hey, we're done with you, but the product that you're throwing out isn't really a bad product. You just are
Mm-hmm.
kind of tired of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're looking for something new. Will never be able to wrap my head around, kicking Don Orsillo out of the booth in favor of Dave O'Brien. And that's not a knock on Dave O'Brien.
No,
I think
look, Dave's a good guy. Don't get me
yeah.
wrong.
And
But,
I think he's a really good play-by-play person, and
mm-hmm.
that's not like, but I think he's much better nationally. I think he's a better like national guy where you don't have like this feeling of a hometown broadcast, because we talked about that ad nauseum, and
Right.
mixing the broadcast yesterday
Right.
is like if Dave O'Brien got on, if they were a mixed broadcast booth for the Yankees Red Sox
Mm-hmm.
wild card, I wouldn't have been able to tell you which booth Dave O'Brien was from, to be
Right.
honest. Which I think is what like what hasn't really endured him to the fan base the same way that Don Orsillo did.
Well, Dave was an ESPN guy. And
Mm-hmm.
then he wanted to do baseball. John Henry hired him. He did a good job in Miami. There's I have no I have absolutely no problem with Dave O'Brien, the broadcaster.
No.
Okay. There is no, absolutely nothing there. Um, and I have absolutely no, having been in situations where where announcers and other talent that you hire, right? Agents will come and and then talent will say, "Hey, look, I I've got other opportunities, right?
Yeah.
if you want me to be here, you're going to have to meet this requirement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to ownership to choose. Okay, do I take do they take this threat, and how important is it to me that that we have this guy? And evidently, to John Henry, it was important that Dave O'Brien be his guy. And so, again, he owns the team. They make the decisions. That's up to him. I
Mm-hmm.
don't own the team. I don't make the decision. So he ends up getting the job. I can't. Again, there's no blame on Dave. Dave's job is to get the best job he can get.
Mm-hmm.
And if he would have, who knows? I mean, hell, he could have ended up in San Diego doing the job that Don Orsello got. And that's how it works in this game.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
I just, I don't know. I just, to me, it's weird. It's a totally bizarre situation where, um, when we start talking about guys like Nomar and guys like Don being out in the West Coast, both of whom you think of Red Sox baseball,
mm-hmm.
and I think it's funny. There's so many transplanted Red Sox fans in the Los Angeles area and certainly in Southern California that I think a lot of it had to do with when Nomar got there. Red Sox fans just said, "Okay, cool, we like him. That's Nomar. He's our boy." So they were with him, and then when Dan Orselli got to San Diego, he had the support of former Red Sox fans who are now following the Padres.
Yeah.
So he was very welcomed by the Padres people. So
Yeah.
it is on a little inside baseball from the broadcast side, but sometimes you look at it and go, I'm not sure why that guy's there, but okay,
Yeah.
uh, we'll go that route.
Well, on a different baseball note, and it's something that I honestly just became aware of. I think it was yesterday about midday, in a discussion that will be had large part where I'm from down here in Atlanta is on Saturday. Brian Snitker was at the Auburn game with the a group of Chipper Jones, Mark DeRosa, and David Ross.
Okay.
And I think that's relevant in their managerial search simply because I don't think Chipper Jones is going to take the job. I think if he was going to have taken the job, that would have already been announced and been done.
Yeah.
I do think he's going to be very hands-on in the picking process, and I think the
Mhm.
same can be said for Brian Snitker and his opinion of the next manager.
Right.
Feels like Mark DeRosa and David Ross are two guys. I'm almost 90. I'm like 99% sure David Ross has like explicitly expressed his interest in the Braves managerial role.
Hmm.
So those are two. I know those are two candidates for the job, and I thought it
Hmm.
was interesting that they were all spotted hanging out together, and maybe a potential insight into the direction that the Braves are looking in for their manager.
Um, I've always thought that Dero would make a good manager. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that he will, but I've always thought Mark DeRosa is one of those very thoughtful guys who understands the game and has a great connection with the players.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
he's in charge of the Team USA baseball, and
right.
it could be maybe it's more related to the Team USA stuff. There's always a chance of that.
Hmm.
Maybe he's trying to get Chipper to come help coach Team USA,
Right.
on his staff there. There's always a possibility, but I thought that it was an interesting, at least interesting enough to make note of the fact that that group of people were hanging out together.
Yeah. What about, does Dero have any real roots with the Braves?
I know that Chipper and him are really good friends. I don't remember if they played together.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So they did play together while they were in Atlanta. So Dero played for the Braves and was on the team with Chipper at some point.
Right. Okay. Um, I know that he is he actually mentioned it a few weeks ago when they were starting to talk about managers, and
Mhm.
the guys on Major League Baseball Network have no problems just straight up asking people.
Yeah.
And of course, Dero is on the MLB Network,
Mhm.
and basically, I think it was Anzinger, probably the
Mhm.
instigator. Anzinger probably, I think it was him that asked him. So, would you accept a managerial job if somebody asked you? And
Mhm.
he said quickly, I'm not looking for that, but he said, if somebody asked me, he said, I'd certainly sit down and have a conversation with them.
Would
So, you know, playing the coy role
mhm.
of I'm not looking for anything, but hey, if somebody asks me, I'm not going to, I'm not going to turn down the opportunity to listen.
Which almost feels like a because it's TV like that. It's a show. You go
Right.
through your pre-show routines. So you like Dero knew the question was coming. They planned on
Sure.
asking it. I almost wonder if there was like a if it was almost like a message of like hey, if you did come to me and want me to do this, I'm willing to like this is something that's feasible. Like I'll do it. I think the same can be said for like they talk about coach speak all the time, and
Hmm.
and it's always going to be like, and I know that Dero's in TV right now, and
Right.
that's not necessarily like a one-to-one comparison.
Right.
But when you hear coaches get tossed up in these coaching searches mid-season, they talk about being focused on what they're focused on right
Sure.
now, and like we'll see where we're at the end of the season. Generally, if they say we'll see where we're at,
Hmm.
like I'm focused on now and we'll evaluate things later. That generally means they're probably pretty open to the idea of it. Like
Yeah.
that was Matt Rule's terminology when talking
Right.
about the Penn State job. Like I would be shocked if Matt Rule wasn't open to the idea of going to Penn State.
Hmm.
So I think as long as somebody comes out and they don't immediately shut it down, it's kind
Right.
of like it's almost like being like, hey, like if you want me, give me the call.
Right. In fairness, I should also mention that Anzinger also listed, I mean, maybe 4 or 5 teams that will be looking for managers
Oh yeah.
in in the off season. And so he didn't specifically, I mean, he mentioned the Braves, he mentioned the Nationals, he mentioned the number of teams.
Hmm.
So again, I think that, as you say, it's coach speak, it's political speech. It's kind of like, I'm not going to say no, but I'm not going to say I'm out looking for that job.
Yeah, and I think the reason that the Braves and the Nationals in specific were probably mentioned is because two teams that Dero played for.
Yeah. And he has very good relations with,
Hmm.
with the ownership groups, as well as you know, the front offices. And he's got a good reputation in all of baseball. So
Hmm.
who wouldn't want to talk to Rosa about, the managing job?
Yeah.
And the players, and one of the good things about the MLB network, which I truly like the MLB network more than the NFL network, because there's less, gimmicky stuff. I wish, for lack of a better way of putting it.
The
Um,
the MLB network feels like it's almost like more old school ESPN, as you've
yeah.
got for the most part a bunch of journalists
Hmm.
and you've got the right sprinkling in of the
Hmm.
former players, but the former players that are really good at their job. Um, and it just creates like this old school ESPN vibe where all of these people really care about this sport and like
Hmm.
really want to talk about it, and they do a really good job of going in depth, but keeping the depth simplistic enough that your common
Hmm.
audience can turn on the TV and kind of understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, and what I've always liked about them, with Greg Enzinger, and the majority of their hosts, and that is that, you know you feel like these guys.
Hmm.
You feel like you're sitting in with a bunch of buddies, right?
Yeah.
And you're watching a game, and the way they do it, I like the fact that they don't do uh, that. They can turn a game on and not dip into the broadcasters of the local station who's doing the game, but
Hmm.
but sit there on set and literally talk to you about what's going on, just like you would if you and I were sitting in, on the couch watching the game.
Yep. Yeah, and that's like I think that's a unique and part of the reason that all of these alternate broadcasts have become so popular
Mm-hmm.
is because some people like that. Like they like that environment when they're watching a game. Maybe they don't maybe they're not sitting there watching it with a group of people at
Mm-hmm.
that point in time, but they like the feeling of like, hey, we're just sitting around talking about baseball, or hey, we're sitting around talking about football. Like this is Monday Night Football. Come sit down with Peyton and Eli.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have a conversation about football.
Right.
It's not going to be play by play and color commentary, but we're just gonna sit here and talk and enjoy ourselves.
Well, it was the MLB Network that started that,
Hmm.
and they actually used to do, once a month they do a game where four guys, would sit in the lounge chairs, kick back, have pizza, and basically the game would be there, and they would, they didn't do play by play, but they talked about it, and they talked about what was going on. They kept the count, going so you knew what was going on, but at
Hmm.
the, it was just like you were sitting there watching an entire game with them,
Yeah,
and that was, I think. It was well received, and I think that it's something that a lot of people just enjoyed.
yeah.
So today we move to Seattle, and the M's, they play. They're a hell of a defensive team. They really don't
Mhm.
beat themselves. It's going to be hard for Toronto to bring that game, in my mind, to bring the series back to Canada.
Yeah, it feels like they're beaten. Like you lose the first two at home, and then you're going
Mhm.
on the road. I mean, it's the same scenario for both series too.
Sure.
Is it because you're now in this stage where, you know, like you can see the talent discrepancies
Hmm.
against the Mariners and the Blue Jays. The same can be said for the Brewers and the Dodgers. Like
Right.
the Brewers are they're still grinding out their bats trying to get on. They can't get on against these Dodger pitchers.
Mhm.
And on the other side, the Brewers pitchers are pitching well. There's not
Yeah.
pitching well enough. Like, you lose a game 3-1, that is what it is. They lost the game last night 5-1. Like
Right.
so you can tell the talent discrepancy in the Blue Jays and the Mariners right now. And I think you're probably going to get another look at it again tonight because you've got Shane Bieber going and he carries like a 6 something ERA into the
Right.
playoffs with his lone start against George Kirby, who for Seattle has been pretty much just absolute nails
Mhm.
in the playoffs. Like he's been fantastic. So you're going against what I think Seattle would probably deem their number two with
Right.
Shane Bieber, a guy who, and we talked about it with the Dodgers arms. He's injured. He's been injured most of the year.
Right.
They've gotten him back from injury recently, so
Mhm.
the arm can be fresh. But there's also that fine line of is the arm fresh or is the arm rusty?
Right.
And I think that Shane Bieber right now, I think his very first start he did well. He pitched fairly well to end the regular season, but I think now you're starting to feel some of that rust Shane Bieber has.
Yeah.
And I think it's starting to show some, and it just feels like an impossible mountain to climb. And I say an impossible mountain to climb, but it's baseball. Like these teams are so closely matched. The Mariners
Mhm.
are minus 130 on the money line. Like just because you feel you have a mountain to climb doesn't mean it's that tall of a mountain. In the playoffs, it feels like Everest. I will say that. But it's not completely, out of the
Mhm.
question, out of the realm. You get a couple games that you call an upset, and then you get into a favorable pitching matchup, and then all of a sudden, you're back in it.
Yeah. Now let me throw something out there and see what you think. Of all of the major sports, I truly think that baseball, with the exception of a couple of places, home field advantage isn't a home field advantage much anymore.
Yeah, that is true. And
I mean, and my caveat is this: yes, it is in some parks. For instance, yes,
yes.
you go to play the Red Sox at Fenway. there are guys at Fenway who know how to play the monster, who know how to play in that ballpark. You go to Chicago to Wrigley, you know how to play the wind. You know how we talked about the wackiness where the Giants park out there, Oracle Park, and the eccentricities of that ballpark. But for the most part, the rest of the ballparks in baseball are pretty much the same, and the crowd is not as close to you as it is obviously in a basketball or hockey situation, or as on top of you as it is in a football situation.
Yeah, and so there's two things I'm going to add. One, I think the Yankees still have a home field advantage, but I think theirs is more of a season long home field advantage
Yeah,
as opposed to a
third
like
term one. Yeah,
one game you need it. Like if the
yeah.
Yankees load up their lineup with left-handed hitters,
Mm-hmm.
every home game they have, they're going to be really hard to beat at home unless you have
Right.
one of the top left-handers, in the world going up against them. But and then in terms of that, here's my question, because it's something that I've thought about like a lot. When fans cheer in baseball, when's the right time to cheer? Like, do you want to like? Are you trying to put pressure on the batter because there's two strikes, or does the
Right.
fan getting loud distract the pitcher from the pitch he's about to make? Like, it feels like, wow, it could be a plus on one side when you're making noise. There's also a shift to the other side. Be like, well, why the heck are we making noise right now?
Right.
I'm I mean, I don't know and I also think that would probably depend on like a player by player basis, which is impossible to know. But I guarantee you there's probably some pitchers out there that are like, yeah, I would prefer if the fans would shut up when I'm trying to close out the ninth inning. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would like a little less noise. Or like in this very tense moment, I would appreciate maybe we wait until I get the guy out to cheer,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But that's something that I've thought about, and it's always been fascinating to me. It's like you cheer and you want to cheer. I'm not sure when the right time to cheer is in baseball.
Yeah. The other thing too, because you've got the place going nuts at a couple of times. Um, it's it's funny. I saw a game where a couple players almost ran into each other, and this is on the home team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the fans were loud and they couldn't hear who called the ball,
Yeah.
and so because it would have been the third out of the inning.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand from a fan standpoint, you're excited because you see that the ball's easily catchable,
Yep.
but at the same time, there could have easily been a screw up there because you're yelling and you can't hear.
Yeah, and like I say when's the right time to cheer, and I mean that genuinely, because there's also times like, and it's not stuff that you really like expect the average person enjoying a baseball game to
Right,
know. But the amount of time strikes are booed as balls, and the amount of time
right,
balls are booed like
yeah,
when they are balls thought of as strikes,
right,
and then the amount of times that like a pop fly comes off the bat, but it sounded a little different. So and it's really high in the air.
right,
So the entire, stadium erupts on a pop fly to center field.
right, because you don't know where it
Yeah.
is.
It just feels like it's a sport that I love, but man, it feels impossible to like when you're in person root for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can. I mean, I guess to me, it's kind of like you want to amp up your. Let's say it's your relief pitcher, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to amp him up so you know, when he's standing on the mound deciding, what pitch he's going to throw, and you've got that 30 seconds there that you can really, do your best as a crowd to amp this guy up.
Mm-hmm.
You do it, but the moment the ball leaves his hand, you shut up.
Yeah. Well, I do think that is generally what happens.
Hmm.
Like I think that's kind of a general rule that
Hmm.
people generally take in that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't know that either one of these series is going to make it through the weekend.
No, it feels like they are both headed towards a rapid end,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a very good idea of what the World Series is going to look like.
Yeah.
But and I will say because I did read it and I do think it's interesting and probably honestly important is they talk about the Brewers and the Dodgers series as like
Mm-hmm.
being this end all be all kind of depiction of what the argument's going to be for the potential lockout in 2027.
Right.
Who's to say that the Mariners and the Dodgers isn't a very similar depiction? Like you have an ownership group that for the most part has drafted and developed and they've signed some smaller free agents, but they don't spend a lot of money. Like that was
Yeah.
the reason Justin Turner left. Justin Turner left because he said they didn't have like a willingness to spend.
Right.
Justin Turner was some, all-star by the time he was in Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
but he's a really good clubhouse guy that I
Right.
think everybody can agree with that on, and he's a pretty valuable bat off the bench, all things considered. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that was his reasoning. Is like they wouldn't spend. So, do the Dodgers have to win it all for the point to be made that the salary cap is needed, or do the Dodgers just have to beat the Brewers and call it? And like that's enough to say, like, look, this salary cap is absolutely necessary.
I I don't. In my personal opinion, this is just my personal opinion, is if they choose to go to a salary cap,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I want to see them choose a floor, a base.
Yes.
You have to spend X amount of dollars.
Yes.
And this goes back to the old George Steinbrenner time when Steinbrenner got pissed off at a league meeting one time and said, I'm tired of giving money to, the Pirates and the Rays and the Athletics, and he listed off a
Mhm.
number of teams. Um, and they're not, and them not spending it on players.
Yeah.
And he said, and it was Steinbrenner who actually said at the time that he wanted. It wasn't that he said, look, if you're, because they didn't have a salary cap, obviously, but they had that you know the luxury tax that they could hit you with.
Mm-hmm.
And George was always above the luxury tax, so that was not that was a given.
Yeah.
Um, and he just basically called out every owner that he felt was who was getting money from the top teams that were spending it,
Mm-hmm.
and weren't reinvesting it in players.
Yeah. I think it's really a two-part question because you talk about George Steinbrenner being upset with the owners of these smaller teams,
Hmm.
which if you're giving them money and they're not fielding competitive product, I think I understand that. But like if you're Rob Manfred,
Right.
why would you not want these owners to spend? Like that feels like something like this. It's a bad look for your league when you can't fill a stadium or field a competitive product on, a number of teams. Like there's a number of teams that going into the season, there is a 0% chance that they will win the World Series, and there's pretty much a 0% chance that they'll make the playoffs. You knew that with the Rockies coming in this year. You knew that with the White Sox coming in this year. You kind of thought it with the A's, and they had a couple of rookies come on that played really
Mhm.
well, and it didn't seem that much like it. You know, with the Marlins coming in, like these are all teams that have just refused to invest. And as these owners, you make money from day one. Like that's the way these MLB franchises work. Like
Mhm.
you're pretty much profitable day one. That's the way it works. Why would you not sink some extra money in to get a better product and fill your stadium up more and have that potential for home playoff games, which would again bring you more revenue? Like I don't understand why they're just content taking the money that they're given and not investing in the product that they own. A product that
Right.
they own, that their name is directly tied to, is just out there rotting and they really don't care because it prints them money to start the year.
Yeah, I just I I am I really am sad for so many franchises
Mm-hmm.
who at the end of the year know that because there are free agents out there
Mm-hmm.
that know, you know what? this is a guy I love. We've really enjoyed watching him. Man, he's been great for us, and now he's headed to the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Red Sox. Name the team, but it
Mm-hmm.
ain't us.
Yep.
And so you feel like you're the AAA farm club
Yep.
for these other franchises. And in all candor, there's 30 baseball teams.
Mm-hmm.
20 of those baseball teams, for all intents and purposes, are not going to come close to making the playoff.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's where baseball is in trouble because they don't, the stars on the teams aren't, don't stay with the team.
Yeah, and I think that's
And
where
you can't blame the players. I mean,
no,
they got to
no.
make a living.
Why would Paul Skeens stay? Like, if Paul Skeens were to hit the free market today,
Right.
what reason would he have to stay in Pittsburgh?
None.
There isn't one. Like, they haven't invested in him. They
Yeah.
haven't invested in the team. They haven't really invested in the infrastructure outside of what they're doing on the baseball field. So
And the city built them one of the most beautiful baseball parks in all of the league.
I haven't been there, but just like optically, it sits on the river. It's got the bridge in the background.
Right.
The park itself looks like it's a different design than all the rest of them.
Yeah.
It's got some unique features, which I think is always important. Like, that's what I look for. Is every ballpark has like a feature that's
Yeah,
supposed
there's
to
quirkiness to that.
yeah, which I think is good. But Ben Sherrington couldn't care less.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't matter to him because they're making him money. That's it. And Paul Skeens is going to go pitch for, the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Red Sox or one of these teams here in a couple of years because they're going to look down the road and say, well, we're not going to pay him. Let's see what we can get for him.
Well, even if they paid him, okay,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to pay. They're not going to spend more money to keep people around them.
Yep.
So what if so great, I signed him, but he's stuck on a team that's not gonna, it's not gonna win.
And I think what we've just done is we've made a good argument for the salary cap model that Rob Manfred is probably going to bring.
Mm-hmm.
And there is going to be a handful of players that are very upset with this model. And probably more than a handful. But
Mm-hmm.
I think in totality, what it boils down to is there's one or two guys in offseason that are going to fetch, north of $100 million. There's a little bit more than a handful of guys that are going to fetch the $100 million number. You're talking probably in the neighborhood of 5, 6, 7 guys in offseason that are going to fetch $100 million, if that. And those are the guys that I think it's going to like affect the most is that those top end guys. But outside of that, it has the potential to make the product across the league a lot better, a lot more balanced, and a lot more competitive throughout the year.
And why wouldn't you want that?
Especially as the commissioner of baseball.
Right.
For as bad and as like beaten down Rob Manfred gets from the media, a lot of the changes that he's made in the recent years have been good for baseball. Like, the pitch clock is really good for baseball. I think the ABS system is really good for baseball. I'm not advocating for full robot umps or anything like that.
Right.
I think the ability that the player has to look at a ball that was a foot and a half off the plate and go, "Hey man, you're wrong, and I'm going to show you," is really good for baseball, especially in a critical moment.
Well, I mean, there's, the situation in tennis. It's become very important, and you go to a video replay just to see where it is, and it's not like you replace the umpire, but as you say, you have a critical moment where you say, I don't know whether it was a ball or strike.
Mm-hmm.
And I want him. It's one of those situations where the bases are loaded. The guy's got a 3-2 count on him, and it's questionable. Is it a ball? Is it a strike? Well, you can go to the video replay and it'll show you.
Yeah, and I think what they've done thus far is good, but I would also caution against over analyzing or over refereeing stuff. Like human error is part of the game. It
Right.
is always going to be part of the various sports that you watch and you
Right.
play. What you absolutely don't want, if you're Rob Manfred in the MLB, is undoing the changes that you've done with the pitch
Right.
and stuff like that for all these review-based processes.
Right.
Because I can tell you point blank, like no doubt about it. I'm really glad that Georgia beat Auburn last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I almost would have preferred for Georgia to have lost if we were to have saved all of the time on the reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was a miserable process watching the
Mm-hmm.
end of that first half.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens a lot of times in football where you overanalyze stuff and like you
Sure.
over review stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very fine line. And so far they've walked it, and I feel like they're walking on the right side of it. But
Yeah.
I just hope that they don't go over that line.
Well, if you go back to Rob's job before he got the commissioner's job, it was Manfred who spent a great deal of time working with the Players Association to keep them from having issues.
Mm-hmm.
So Rob understands the player side of it,
Yeah.
but he's not on the player side of it now. He's he's the commissioner of baseball. And I, like I said, I think Rob is smart enough to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a TV contract that's coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that TV contract, which he would love to have, it'd be the same as the NBA is not going to be that close
Mm-hmm.
to what the NBA got, but it's going to be good enough that these baseball teams will start, the season off, approximately 85 to $100 million before they ever sell a hot dog or a ticket to a game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he can potentially use that bully pulpit to say, look, I got you this kind of money. Now you got to spend it.
Yeah. Yeah. And which is a fair point. Like if you're starting the year with like
Mhm.
that much in the green.
And by the way, we're not counting any local television money.
Mm-hmm.
We're simply speaking that the moment that the season begins, that Major League Baseball is going to send you a check, for
Mm-hmm.
something north of $80 million right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's going to be north of $100 million in 2 years.
Yeah. And like I think that's the thing that should frustrate fan bases that don't spend
Mm-hmm.
is when you are starting profitable.
Mm-hmm.
Like if baseball teams started negative, just throwing out a hypothetical number, say they started in the red $50 million on
Mm-hmm.
opening day. So far my baseball team has lost $50 million.
Right.
You're going to make that back relatively quickly within a season, like probably within a week or two. You'll probably be back to a closer number there. Like you have no reason not to spend. You
Right.
are in a safe financial spot as a major league owner right now, and yet they don't.
And the funny part of it is that yes, baseball, because there's 162 games, the attendance matters. There's no question. I would never argue that point. It does. Concessions matter. All of that matters to the
Mhm.
bottom line. But it's the point is not that it matters. Of course it matters. The point is you're playing with house money at that point.
Yeah,
So it's more to the point of how much more money are you going to get than what you get on, you're not losing money. There's no baseball team out there, or for that matter NBA team or NFL team that is losing money. If you are losing money, you are inept at what you're doing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no reason for baseball owners not to spend what they don't spend. So you
Mhm.
have to you have to the in 2027 there has to be a change that pretty much forces their hand.
Mhm.
I don't know what that change. If the change is the salary cap, then it changes the salary cap. You know that
Right.
that is what it is. It won't affect me all that much because the Red Sox don't spend like they used to, anyways.
Well,
So
I mean, let's just take one real quick last ditch example here. When David Stern was the commissioner of the NBA, Stern, and their free agency was there. I mean, it wasn't like there wasn't free agency. David came up with the idea that you could designate a player on your team who is quote unquote your, almost. I'm going to use a football term, which would be franchise player, right?
Mhm.
So let's say somebody came after, Reggie Miller, and Reggie was playing for Indianapolis and the Pacers. And so he's playing for Indiana, and you offered him $210 million to go play for the Knicks. The Indiana had the opportunity to match whatever it was. So his goal was to say, look, you have the opportunity to keep your player if you want to.
Yeah.
And that was something he did. It pissed the owners off. The players weren't too upset about it because, frankly, they were going to get paid regardless of whether it was on the team they stayed on. But look at how many players stayed. Reggie Miller stayed in Indiana his entire career.
Yeah.
You don't think Reggie could have gone to a bigger market and made more money and won championships?
Yeah. Absolutely could have.
And so, you look at it and you look at this whole new, system that came about, which was supposed to be better. And now you're just creating super teams where guys go and they're chasing rings.
Yeah.
Did that make the sport better?
No, I mean the argument is that it made it worse. Like that's what everybody talks
Yeah,
about when they talk about the era of the super teams,
yeah,
specifically in the NBA. Honestly, I think part of the reason that people kind of I think the NBA's maybe gotten a little bit of popularity back is that it feels like
mhm,
your talent's a little more spread out now throughout the
right.
league. But yeah, I mean, and maybe you can trace it back to a different origin, but the era of the super team was LeBron and what was it, 13 or
Oh, you mean when he
when he decided to go to Miami. Yeah, when
he
he
had the
decided to go to
situation
Miami.
where he said he was going to go to one of three teams and he ended up Miami.
Yeah, where he picked the spot where
Yeah,
and he
Chris
brought
Bosh
he
and
brought Bosh with him and Wade stayed.
yeah,
They built that big three to get
right.
past Boston.
Yeah, but guess what? As we know, they played in 4 title games. They lost twice to San Antonio.
Mm-hmm. They lost to
And why?
Dallas too.
Because Pop had a team. They didn't have a team.
Yeah,
They had 3 good players and then Manny Moore and Jack off the bench.
yeah. I mean and that's what the Mavericks beat them.
Yeah,
Now, granted, you can place that on Dirk Nowitzki's heroism
right.
in those playoffs because that was it's got an argument to be the best playoff run ever in the NBA. But
Right.
they didn't get what they wanted to do done. So then a few years later, Kevin Durant signed with the Warriors and said, "Hey, LeBron, like this is how you do a super team. If you're going to get everybody in one spot, this is how you
Mm-hmm.
do it." They I mean they walked out there and they were better than you. It didn't matter what they did. They were better than you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, anyway. Well, I think we have solved the ills of Major League Baseball, and we'll send this copy of this to Commissioner Manfred and see what he says. All right, so we both agree that we don't think that we think it, as things if things continue to track as we think they will, Seattle makes their first World Series,
mhm.
and I think that would be a hell of a matchup between the Dodgers and Seattle.
Would it be their first World Series, or would they have to win it to win their first?
No,
Because
they've never been in a World Series.
Seattle's never been in a World Series.
No, they're the only team in baseball that hasn't.
Wow. Huh.
And when I say the only team in baseball, we're going back, in some cases, for some of these teams, we're going back the 50s, the 60s. It's been a while.
Yeah, that's what it was.
But
They made it to
they
the ALCS 3 times.
yeah, Toronto and Seattle came into the league at the same year in the 77.
Mm-hmm.
So they have never been to a World Series.
Yeah. Well, and then you got Toronto who won 2.
Yeah, Toronto did, but I'm just saying
Exactly.
that the Mariners have never been, and the Dodgers have definitely been.
Yeah.
They would be the defending world champions. So, and just just one quick aside on that Dodger thing. If they get back to the World Series, and there's no guarantee, let's just say we believe they will.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as much the money as which obviously helps. There's no question about that. I'm not taking it out of the equation, but you still have to win games. You can't just say, well, gosh, you spent, look at that payroll. Well, yeah, you can look at the payroll, but at the end of the day, they still have to play 162 games and then get into the playoffs and win their way back. So, great. Yeah. You spend all that money, but that doesn't guarantee you're going to get to the championship.
Yeah. Spending the money doesn't guarantee winning. Ask the Mets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it definitely is.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it's a step that you have to take. Like you have to be one of the many commonalities of World Series champions is that for the most part, and like I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but most of them are in the top 5 of spending in baseball, like payroll wise. So it's definitely a step that has to be taken, spending money, but it does not guarantee you anything.
No, because you can spend money unwisely.
Mm-hmm.
And see Steve. Well, we won't go to the Mets, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, here I'll give it to you. Look at Auburn right now. They flooded, like they've poured so much money into recruiting and high school recruiting, and they've gotten a lot of really good guys on campus.
Right.
Like high 5-star guys. Good, a lot of good 4 stars. They're 3-3 right now.
Right.
So,
hey, it doesn't. Nothing beats coaching and understanding where to go.
Yep.
And that's what it's all about. Well, okay, everybody. We've had a lot of fun talking baseball today. Tomorrow, it'll be the battle of 2 40-year-old plus quarterbacks as Joe Flacco leads the Bengals into a matchup with Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers for Thursday Night Football. And we'll talk about the Dogs hosting College Game Day, which should be fun on the campus. And, one of the things, like, real quick, then we'll talk about it more tomorrow. I really like the fact that that game day's going there and that the game's in the afternoon.
Yes.
As opposed to, doing game day and then you're not seeing anything about the football game until 7:30 that night. So I'm glad that they're going to game day. The game day is going to be there. I think it's going to be a tremendous football game between the Dogs and the in Ole Miss. So
I hope so.
It might be one of the most entertaining. But I'll put it this way: I think it has the potential of being one of the most entertaining and exciting games this year in all of football.
Yeah. And I will say the storyline of Lane and Kirby, like those two guys being really like Saban's main. I think when you think about Nick Saban and his dynasty, when it was really at its peak, going the best, Lane Kiffin was the offensive coordinator, Kirby Smart was the defensive coordinator.
Yep.
Like those feel like your 2 main Saban disciples. Obviously, there's a ton of others littered around college football, but these are the 2 main ones. And Lane has a lot more of the outward personality than Kirby, but Kirby's got plenty of it of his own too.
And I think that one of the things that, and we'll talk much more about it tomorrow, but I think one of the things that gets overlooked is that there is a tremendous amount of mutual respect for those 2 guys.
Yes.
They care about each other. They are very tight. They're very friendly. They are
Mhm.
not going to be friends for about 3 hours on on Saturday,
Yep.
but Kirby and Lane do. There've been numerous times that they've had each other's back on a number of different issues,
Yeah.
and I think the fun part of watching it is that they do have respect for each other. They do understand how each other coaches, which makes it fun to watch because they know each other so well.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that what they do is they run their systems, and I talk when systems I'm talking about. They run their teams in pretty much the same way. They really there's a great attention to detail by both coaches on every aspect of what goes on. Uh, on the doesn't matter what player you are. You could be the 100th player on the roster. They know what's going on,
Mhm.
and I think that's what makes them successful. So I think that anytime they get together, it's always fun. Lane is as you say, Lane will poke the bear. He'll have some fun with Kirby,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, they are um, two guys who respect each other very much, and when they're not playing against each other, they actually have. I've known this for a fact that they root for each other.
Mhm.
So that won't be the case on Friday. It's on Saturday, but it will be. It will be fun to watch, and it's always fun to watch those two guys try to try to pull it to sneak around each other and figure out a way to beat each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So fun time in Georgia this week. So tomorrow we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the NFL Thursday night game and preview some of the Saturday games that might be very entertaining this week. So until
Absolutely.
then, everybody have a lovely day. For Matt, I'm Jim. Take care.